In Sudan, the World Health Organization reports that since 2023, and this is devastating, there have been more than 100 verified attacks. And the word that I'm pushing here is verified, right? The ones that we can prove, there's evidence, on healthcare services, 100 attacks on healthcare services. Over 75 of them, just like in Palestine, have involved health facilities, and 45 have impacted health personnel. In addition, attacks have been reported on transport, and I think of the 15 that were killed so mercilessly, including ambulances, medical supplies, and warehouses. In 29 of these incidents, patients were directly affected. The attacks on health facilities in Sudan have a devastating impact on a country engulfed by violence. Civilians are experiencing the largest human displacement in the world, with over 13 million people forcibly displaced, both within the country and outside its borders. While in Palestine, in Gaza, as of April 2025, Gaza's healthcare system is on the brink of total collapse. Many people on the ground report it has collapsed. The UN reports that over 70% of its infrastructure, including health services, have been destroyed. At the time of their last report, only 15 out of 36 hospitals remain partially operational, primarily in not such of the hot zones, primarily in the central and southern regions. The Al-Ali Arab Hospital, once a critical facility in northern Gaza, was evacuated and subsequently destroyed by Israeli airstrikes, leaving thousands without essential medical care. More, as my friend Anissa Musa said, more than 1,200 healthcare workers have lost their lives. More than 1,200. And those are the ones that we could count since the conflict's escalation in October 2023. Over 60% of essential medications are out of stock. With the blockade, nothing is getting in. 100% is out of stock. And the near total electricity blackout severely hampers medical operations. And at the moment, the blockade means mass starvation. The UN warns, and here we could bitterly smile, the UN warns that these conditions may, hello? May, yes, let's all snigger, it may constitute violations of international law and are pushing Gaza's healthcare system to the brink of total collapse. We remember them, these healthcare workers. And Mahmoud Abu Nujaila, a doctor who worked with Médecins Sans Frontières in a Gaza hospital, who was killed in an Israeli airstrike along with his colleagues. All of us know the story. It's one of those bitter stories that make us sad. Makes me sad in a moment. He wrote on a hospital whiteboard, "Whoever stays until the end will tell the story. We did what we could. Remember us." He was subsequently killed. So today we remember here in this room. Nigel Gibson reminds us that Fanon mapped out this dark turning and this regression. He reminds us of the backdrop for this conflict when he writes, "Such challenges are connected to the issue of violence and psychological suffering, and these are in turn related to histories of torture, social uncertainty, and scarcity, as well as global vulnerability and periods of crisis when, as Gramsci put it, morbid symptoms appear." We are under the rubble. It is a battleground. Yes, we are under fire, and we as healthcare workers have no ammunition. Morbid symptoms have appeared. Perhaps we need to reflect, rethink, and resist. We live in a world where health is packaged as personal responsibility, as compliance, and as payment. The clinical gaze, as Foucault laid bare, reduces people to cases, bodies to data, and pain to pathology. But we are here today to unmask that gaze, to say we do not accept this narrowing of what it means to be well, what it means to work in a battleground. Health in our framing is not individualistic nor apolitical. It is inseparable from histories of violence, from patriarchy and corruption, from broken Batopile principles and structural abandonment, from war, displacement, occupation, and erasure. From colonial apartheid to settler and Israeli apartheid. Why have we been blinded and silenced under the rubble? Fanon, the psychiatrist and revolutionary, understood this deeply. In colonial war and mental disorders so many decades ago, he showed us how the psychic wounds of the oppressed are not anomalies. They are the logical outcomes of dehumanizing systems. Fanon compels us to see that healing in brutalized, violent context in the battlegrounds cannot occur without radical change. There is no treatment plan for unjust, dehumanizing conditions. There is only resistance and new humanisms. Let us heal ourselves and not be the bruised, subaltern characters, watching our lives unfold without us. So if today we speak of ethical activism, let us be clear. Ethics is not about neutrality. It is not about universities not having statements of solidarity. It's not about positioning ourselves above some amazing fray. Ethical care in our moment means choosing human rights. It means speaking plainly in the face of non-delivery of services, here and elsewhere. It means speaking clearly about what is happening and genocide. It means speaking up and speaking out. It means standing with the oppressed everywhere, here in our hospitals, clinics, in the streets, and in far-off forums, in our posts, our social media posts, in petitions, and in human aid, and in Gaza, of course. We need to witness it. We need to find the words. We need to name the violence embedded in our own institutions and disciplines, in our healthcare practices, and we need to find the actions. I know we can't even dream of them yet. Oh, and finally, we are live. As healthcare workers, researchers, teachers, and students, we must ask, what do we reproduce in the name of this health professionalism? And crucially, how do we reclaim our work as part of the broader fight for human rights? This reclamation is not metaphorical. It is deeply material. It is found in the acts of defiance that disrupt the smooth running of harmful systems. It is what I call critical acts of occupational resistance. It is the refusal to normalize suffering, the insistence that care must be context-rooted, and the political responsibility to act is within us, especially when systems tell us to stay quiet. John Lewis called this good trouble. But let us not romanticize it. Good trouble costs something. It is uncomfortable, it is dangerous, but it is necessary. If we are to reclaim care, we must be willing to be disruptive, to make our work matter, not only in academic journals, but on the streets, in communities, and in the everyday survival of those pushed to the margins. So I ask, what would it look like to reimagine health sciences, not as a neutral field, but as a terrain of struggle? What would it mean for us to turn our disciplines outward, to step into the fray and make care a weapon for justice, digging us out from underneath the rubble? Let this gathering not simply be a witness of suffering, but a site of collective reckoning. Let it be a place where we refuse the complicity mentioned before. Commit to action and reclaim care, not as charity, not as performance, but as ethical, radical, liberatory activism. I think it is time to push for a center here. I'm sad that the people in power aren't here, actually, because I'm calling for us to build a center of health justice here within the College of Health Sciences at UKZN, centering, number 1, structural justice, number 2, community power and participatory reform, number 3, intersectionality and self-critical practice, number 4, solidarity, advocacy, and the ethics of care, and number 5, climate health and environmental justice. I have definitely taken too long. During this past week for Palestine, in events leading up to this, I have seen a frustration and darkness in the rooms. Yes, we have limited options at the moment. We sit in solidarity, assuaging our own grief, our own guilt of being alive, of being here, of doing min. Perhaps we are assuaging our conscience, but we hold them. We do not forget. We remember. We keep hope going so that after this we can assist in rebuilding. We wait for that moment and then we rebuild. And we'll be there in the rehabilitation, in the training, and in ways we have not yet imagined. Mandela always had a way of words, and he did say a couple of good things. And so he said, "We know too well that our freedom is incomplete without the freedom of the Palestinians." For 45 years ago, in The Question of Palestine, Edward Said wrote that the word Palestine, 45 years ago he wrote, the word Palestine has become a symbol for struggle against social justice. Yes, I hope you agree. Thank you.
Just a glimpse into the reality of Gazans and Gazan healthcare workers. A reminder that we can do hard things, and doing hard things together makes it a little bit easier. We'll now begin our panel discussion moderated by Professor Monique Marks, and I'll hand over to her.
Good afternoon, everyone. Am I audible from here? Okay. I'm not really even sure where to begin after those visuals, and I think everybody feels exactly the same way. I just wanted to make just a few remarks and then just say how we're going to proceed going forward. A couple of reflections on the trauma that we just witnessed before us. Some thoughts that came to mind, some thoughts that the panel may reflect on, some thoughts that are probably in your own heads already. Just that came to me almost like bullets. And the one was medical and allied healthcare workers as frontline workers in every possible sense of the word. Dealing with trauma, dealing with homelessness, dealing with the military, dealing with communities, having to become community leaders, doing things that they were trained for and that they were not trained for. Playing God when that is the last thing that any healthcare worker wants to do, deciding who will live and who will die. Being surrounded by death when what people who go into the medical and allied professions try to do is to keep people alive, to treat them. People who go into these professions do not want to deal with death. This may sound weird, but it is true. Dealing with people that are part of your family and that are friends in this kind of setting is not what healthcare workers are supposed to do, and yet forced to in this situation. The trauma, the loss, the decimation, the destruction, the momentary hope and then loss of hope is what we witness between and among the healthcare professionals and workers that we see. Coming from a psychosocial perspective myself, what immediately comes to my mind is that there is no way to imagine the collective and individual psyche following what has happened in Gaza and on the West Bank. What we will see, without a doubt, is an increase of PTSD. We will see an increase in anxiety and depression. We will see an increase in substance use. We will see an increase in neurodiverse, debilitating conditions, which are an interplay of both genetics and early exposure to conflict and trauma. And we will see an increase in isolation and loneliness, an inability to connect with other human beings because of the destruction, the death, and the torture which people have had to deal with internally in their minds and in their bodies. These are the thoughts that came to me as I was watching, but they're the thoughts that have been sitting in my mind since the beginning of the destruction of a people in Palestine and on the West Bank. So today's discussion is really going to be a reflection on what it is that healthcare professionals and workers think about how they engage in social realities such as this one, how they give voice, how they make changes, and how, going back to what Chantal was saying earlier, how we transform the social determinants that can only lead to poor health outcomes. Today's discussion, and please excuse me, when we think about these situations, it's not just in spaces of trauma, collective and individual, in spaces of poverty. We have to think about these things in all aspects of provision of healthcare, even within the private sector. Is what do we do? How do we perform well as healthcare and allied workers? And one of the things that comes to mind is we put away our titles and we recognize that we are not doctors or professors or anything else. We are human beings engaging in this complex world just like anybody else. That we are patient-centered, that we engage and hear the stories and find solutions together with the people that we care for. And most importantly, that we understand the social conditions in which we work and in which the people for who we care for come from, because that is just as important as the bodies that we present to healthcare professionals and allied workers. With those very simple remarks, because enough has been said already in the two amazing introductory commentaries and in the documentary itself, we have three speakers who I am going to call by their first names in living practice of what I've just spoken to. They will each present for 12 minutes, reflecting on healthcare workers in spaces of devastation, of inequality, of poor social determinants of health. And in the case of Hanan, perhaps her own personal reflections as a pharmacist from Gaza. And I'm going to begin with Hanan. After that, we will hear all three of the speakers, and then we will open up to questions and comments from the floor. There are a couple that have already been sent to us, and I'll raise them at the beginning. Hanan, thanks so much.
So, assalamu alaikum and good afternoon, everyone. Let me start with what I felt when I got invited to this event. So, first, my name is Hanan Qanan, and I'm a pharmacist holding a master's degree in health management from Gaza. And I managed to evacuate from Gaza after 6 months of the ongoing genocide. So I've been here in South Africa for almost 1 year now. Okay. When I got invited to this event, to be honest with you, the first feeling is hesitation. Because for me, as someone from Gaza, from the same people as you saw, it's a little bit different when it comes to my emotions. So it's both like mixed emotions. I find myself like in these two, in between of two situations. The first one is I have to speak up. I have to tell the story to everyone, especially to the people outside Gaza. But in the first, in the same situation, I have to be like care for my self emotions, because at the end of the day, I'm a mother and I have 3 children and a husband and a very stranger in this community, foreigner. So yesterday I asked my husband, what shall I say? And he said, like, be yourself. The media is all over the world now. What you feel that you have to say, just say it. And then I was lying on the couch trying to write something, because English is not my first language. I can speak it, but it's not my first language, so better to write something before any of the speech. So I found this title, Under the Rubble, reflects more than just broken buildings. This is what I wrote. It echoes the pain, the resilience, and the dreams of people who have been systematically erased from the headlines, but never and ever, they will never be erased from the history. I'm a person who comes from Gaza, where I lived through months of war, almost 7 months of this genocide, and I lived under unimaginable loss. I survived alongside my 3 children under the fire, under siege, and under rubble, both for my emotions. I can't, okay. As a healthcare professional, I saw more than wounds. I saw courage in my people. I saw medics working without supplies, literally, without sleep, and sometimes without safety, most of the times. I saw doctors performing surgeries in candlelight, nurses comforting children as bombs fell outside, paramedics who never made it back from their missions. The healthcare workers in Gaza are not just service providers, they are frontline defenders of life, dignity, and humanity. They are the heartbeat of our nation under attack. As a humanitarian worker, I witnessed the collapse of the systems. I witnessed the collapse of the universities, of Al-Shifa Hospital, of Nasser Hospital, of Kamal Udwan Hospital. I witnessed the full collapse of these 3 hospitals, and we were just running, thinking, gathering, and asking ourselves, the first question was and still is, why? As a humanitarian worker, again, now based in South Africa, I carry Gaza with me in every word I speak and every step I take. People who knows me knows that between the two sentences, the word of Gaza should be there. It's for me. I'm here today to testify, to remember, and to represent those who can't be here. This is not just a gathering. I hope that this is not just a gathering. It's a call of collaboration. It's a reminder that being Palestinian from Gaza means rising literally from the rubble. Again and again and again and again, not just to survive, but to lead, to heal, and to stand for justice. Let me just add a little story. People outside Gaza know Gaza now as the place of death, trauma, casualties, and injured people. But for me, also as a healthcare worker, I have to remind everybody that there are thousands of people in Gaza are facing death by silent factors. All the people with chronic diseases, all the people with infectious diseases, children under 5 years old are literally dying from starvation and from the severe shortage of the health services and equipment, medications. So for me, I will just, I just wrote the story of my mother. My mother was suffered from a stroke in July, just 3 months before the 7th of October. And she had like a full disability in her left side of her body. We were trying, me and my sister, who is a doctor by profession, to just help her and to get her the medications and the rehabilitations. Then she started after 2 months she was able to just move some of her fingers, left fingers and left leg. After the 7th of October and until now, because of the severe shortage of the medications, and when I have this opportunity to call her, because all the time there is no internet, there is no connection, now she can't like just get up from one of the chair and go by her own self to the toilet. And why? She is a full educated woman. She knows exactly her rights and she knows exactly how to treat herself. But unfortunately, there are like a severe shortages in the medications she took, and there is no rehabilitation at all services for the chronic disease and the patients who was affected from such chronic diseases. So in Gaza, imagine the situation. Let me tell you, in all of the health services all around the world, there is something called triage, which means prioritization of the casualties, prioritization. But in Gaza, we have a special categorization for this triage and a special categorization for this priority, which is always making us speechless. For my mom, her priority comes at the end of the list. Because every day, every minute, we have like tens, sometimes hundreds of people who needs immediate intervention, immediate health intervention. So for her, it's a kind of, we can't spoil you with the rehabilitation. We can't spoil you. The only thing that you can do is to keep sitting on your chair, if you are lucky and have chair, of course, and then, okay, and then make dua, maybe ask God just to keep your health status as it is, because we can't spoil you. We can't babysit patients, stroke patients. So this is like a very small story. Again, this is me. This is Hanan. I wish, actually, what I wish is to call for justice. So if you have, I'm not familiar with the universities here in South Africa. I'm not familiar with the modules. I'm not familiar with the courses, but from my place here, I can call for a course that should be recognized here in South Africa, especially after I heard a lot and I studied a lot about the disparities here in South Africa and the inequalities, which is sometimes remind me of my home country, to put an ethical course which speaks deeply about the social justice, about being human, not being like someone rich who can pay for the health services or not, and I'm not sure how to rephrase it, but to make sure that these students, these graduates, believe from their heart that there is no differences between people, whether you are from different races, different religions, different gender, different thoughts. They have to believe it. The professors or the academics should actually think deeply how to create such a course, and then inshallah from here, from South Africa, maybe from this university, they can come and fly outside and then disseminate all of these ideas, inshallah. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Hanan, and for braving the film and the audience. Just a couple of things. I think you've posed a challenge to UKZN and to the other universities in South Africa, and that is to develop a course which is something around healthcare and humanitarian disasters, which encompasses in it what is the moral compass of healthcare professionals and what do we do in situations like that. I think that is an amazing idea, Hanan, and one that I think those of us that are interested in teaching and learning should really take up. And it could be an amazing collaboration with people that are in the field, both here and abroad. Two other quick things that came up from Hanan, because I don't want to take much time, was the importance of being a witness and having testimony. You know, you spoke about that. We all, in our lives generally, want a witness to our lives. That's often what people refer to as their partners. They are a witness to our lives. Because otherwise, who is there to say what happened and what didn't happen? And we stand here as witnesses, and we get the testimonies that tell us what history is going forward. Because history is a very strange thing. It's open to interpretation, and it's written by people who have power. But I think the testimonies that you talk about, the witnessing, is going to mean down the line unraveling the personal stories that people have and getting away from the numbers. And I think that is our challenge, right? And it's certainly a challenge that those of us from the humanities would take very seriously. We have too many numbers. They become meaningless. But the human stories remain with us. And lastly, I wanted to say something just as a point of contention, but I think it's important. Hanan, you're here, right? And I think there's an importance about you being here. Resilience does not mean you have to stay in a context that is destroying your family and yourself every day. That expectation is an unfair expectation. And the expectation should be, how do we prevent ongoing suffering, individual and collective? And where that means exiting, we do not judge that. We do not judge that. But it also means that as people exit, those of us that are able to enter, so that we really are talking about breaking down global boundaries, which are being reinvented all the time with thanks to some of our leaders internationally. So Hanan, thank you so much. Imtiaz, I'm going to hand over to you.
Thanks, Mandy. Thanks, Hanan, for that presentation. I will try not to overlap on the points because we've seen too much in the media. We've seen the videos. We've seen the people say the things over and over again. I want to try to analyze what's the importance of this war. Sounds silly. What's the importance of this war? You see, on the 7th of October when it happened, we do what we do every time. Okay, get the teams ready, get the medicines, go into Gaza, to take medical care. And we do this over and over again. That week, the Al-Ahli hospital was bombed. And I said to myself, wait, hold on. We're doing the same stupid things over and over again. It reminds me when I go to Alex to the Yakske River, the water comes, wash the houses away, we rebuild the houses, the next day we build houses again, people get washed away, and we rebuild the houses again. I said, what are we doing? In 2009, we went in with teams. In 2014, we went in with teams. In 2013, we set up an office. This is repetition. It sounds crazy to do the same things over and again. And then I realized the battle is not on the ground. The battlefield is not on the ground. It's in the intellect, in the discussion all over the world that 76 years of lies have to be reversed. And the only way to do this is to take the Zionists, Israel, and America head on, because they're not used to doing for other people to challenge them. They go to the United Nations and they go and alone and they bomb Iraq. They take a decision on own. It's not a United Nations decision. They act with impunity. They act with aggression. It's ego. It's hubris. They're not used to being challenged by anybody. And that's why the greatest thing that happened in this year or in this time was when South Africa decided to take them to the ICJ. You see, the judges asked me, what did we achieve? I said, what does it matter what you achieved? We make, from Islamic perspective, the intention is more important than the action. That's our teaching. What did you achieve? You showed Israel and America and Zionists and their friend that we're not afraid to take you on. We're not afraid of the consequences because we are a principled people. In 5 days, our economy lost 1 trillion rand because of that action. But at the same time, we gained 60 countries who are brave enough to stand up, which would have never stood up before. You think it's going to take another 76 years to liberate Palestine? It's never going to happen. Because of that action of people standing up worldwide, the bravery, the courage, the means to speak out has changed. We've seen the masses transform all across the world. Students are prepared to lose their places in universities in America. Jewish people have stood up everywhere. They are our greatest asset even in this country. Next week, Thursday, I'm hosting a supper for Jewish people in South Africa, in Cape Town especially, who have been ostracized by their own Zionist families. I've met them, I've seen them hurting and crying and broken because they can't talk to their sister or their sister's children or to their brother. They are ordinary human beings, but they're the first in the marches. They're the first in the protests. They're the first to speak out. Last week, on the 28th of April, there was a book sale in the Jewish National Library. It was a Jewish Literary Festival in Hatfield Road inside Cape Town, in the town. Megan Choritz, who runs the South African Jews for a Free Palestine, is a Jewish lady. That book got nothing to do with politics. It was written long before this happened. They excluded her from the festival because she wrote this book. Brave as she was, she went outside the festival and put the stand outside and started putting the book there. What was the importance of that action? It was important to show her own resilience, her own commitment, to say that I'm not like them, that I'm part of the human race. Exactly what Hanan is talking about? Ethics, morality, values, purpose, principles. She lived by it. I was in Cape Town because we took swimmers from Robben Island to swim to Blowbackstrand to make a statement that we stand by this. Robben Island is significant. about fighting apartheid. 27th April is significant about fighting apartheid. Israel is apartheid since 1948, the same time as South Africa. They had to be taken on. But you see, there's an important element that's missing here. The power of spirituality. We don't understand that. They decided, the swimmers, that they're going to swim on 27 April. But you can't decide up front we're going to swim on 27 April because you need to check the current that day. You need to know how the water is going to be. You're going to know how the circumstances are. They were supposed to do it in January. Something came in the way and they said no. Then they said March. And the guy said, we're fasting, we can't do it then. And they suddenly decided 27th April. Everything was in place. These swimmers are from mixed cultures, mixed religions. Even some of them don't belong to any religion. They just want to do this for humanity. So we get ready. 48 hours before the swim, the boat company pulls out. We got pressure from the Zionists that you will not do this. And they called me and I said, I love this. Me, I love challenges. I only like action. If something goes wrong, I get very happy. Otherwise, I get very bored, to be honest. And within 48 hours, you see how God works, understand the power of spirituality. 2 years ago, we took out 22 guys from Sudan who were caught up in the battlefield in the war. And DERCO came to us and said, help. We helped the South Africans, we helped Nigerians, Zimbabweans, Angolans, and people from other countries, and we pulled out South Africans. 22 got stuck in Egypt, and we pulled them out. What happened is that one of the 22 is involved in shipping. My team member in Cape Town remembered that he went to him and he met him, but I didn't meet them. They went straight to Cape Town. And he's in shipping. He said, let me call him. He said, yes, wait, I think somebody can help you. He called a guy called Godfrey Neelan from Offshore Marine Services. Needham from Offshore Marine Services. He said, for you guys, anything. I got the biggest boat, the best support boat, the best horsemen, the best skippers. We do it for international people. My boat is yours and it's available on the 27th of April. What's the chances of that being a coincidence? When they did the weather chart, the best day in the month of April was some from Robben Island to Bloemfontein was 27th April. The weather was incredible in Cape Town that day. It was amazing how the support it garnered from across the country. It ran across the nation and it reached outside. And these swimmers were absolutely dedicated. You see, their spirit, their resilience in that cold water of 14 degrees to show we care is what makes a difference to the Palestinian struggle. They said, we know we're getting bombed. And you know, we say this all the time, Hasbunallahu wa ni'mal wakil. God's not testing them. He must be tired of testing them for 76 years. He knows they're going to say the same thing over and over again. They say that over and over again. He's testing us. He's testing our response to them. And the world has come to the party. It's not going to take 76 years. You see, you saw these pictures. Somebody asked me about hope. It's on the screen. Can't you see it? How calm are they? How calm are they in that situation? How they move in groups to take people they don't even know. How they run with all difficulties and make things work. The last statement the guy said, this will be the hospitals that can do anything in the world. Reminds me of the hospital that we set up in Syria, in the war zone in the north. There, all the patients came there. When everybody was bombing hospitals, we set up a hospital in the middle of a war zone. And that hospital has treated all kinds of people. But the doctors from that hospital will probably be the best trauma doctors in the world because of their commitment and their care. My final point, because the lady is chasing me here, is to talk about my teams. On day 7, when it happened, I told them, Netanyahu is going to go crazy because his ego has been totally messed up. How did they do this in front of me, under his watch? Please buy everything, stock up everything. He's going to be, all hell's going to break loose in your place. Exactly that happened. On day 10, October 17, they told me the genocide has started. They're bombing everything. Hospitals, schools, ambulances, clinics, mosques, churches, water plants, electricity, technology, everything, the schools, the roads, everything is going. They are going to destroy us totally. And just the last part, because my time is up, about the resilience. In the first week of November, the head of my office, Ahmed Abbasi, called my Middle East director, Dr. Malik. I got teams in Egypt, in Turkey, in Gaza, and in the West Bank. And he, right now. And he said, I don't think we're going to make it. But I'm going to take my 33 family members. I'm not going to run south, east, north, and west. I'm not going to listen to them. That's indignified. I'm going to sit in my house with my 32 family members, and I'm going to wait for the bombs to fall and kill all of us one time. And in the day, I will do my responsibility. 12th November, I was doing a session on what you call this thing, podcast. Yeah, I was doing that in the mosque in Cape Town. Whilst I was speaking, I got a premonition that on day 40 something is going to happen. On day 41, 16 November, 4 a.m., Ahmed Abbasi, the head of our office, was killed with his brother and 22 other people. I was in hospital. I just come out of theater. When my team sent me the message, I said, pull his wife and his family out of there right now. His wife and his kids are safe in Egypt. Our teams worked. And the last sentence, when they send me the videos, I can't understand how they can be so calm, how they can smile when they send you that video. It's an uncanny type of faith that everything's bombing around you. You don't know what's happening for yourself and your family. My teams have lost 205 family members. One team alone member has lost 105 family members. But they carry on smiling. All these meetings we have is to make sure we take the battlefield intellectually. On the war, Israel has already lost. Because in 1967, in 6 days, they destroyed 3 Arab armies. There is no army in Gaza. There's no tanks, no planes, no ammunition, no heavy artillery, no navy, nothing. What America's help and the Western countries' help were 2,000 kilogram bombs. 20 months have gone, 19 months have gone yesterday. And they've made no progress besides killing innocent people. Who's won the war? Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Imtiaz. I'm going to just, there are words that come to mind. And what comes to mind is we are all guided by values. All our actions are guided by values. And we sometimes forget how important values are. And when we ask people, what are your values? Sometimes we're stuck. We don't think about them, right? But actually, that's what makes us act the way that we do, right? Values are fundamental. So I'm going to mention what values you spoke to, just for us to remind ourselves about. Hope, solidarity, defiance, spiritual beliefs, determination, and action. Those are the values that you spoke to. And they're powerful values, right? So if we live by our value systems, then we have consistency with our lives, and we look back on our lives and we don't have regret. Because I think that that's incredibly important. I also wanted to mention something, Imtiaz. What you spoke to was also the importance of finding ways to shift dominant power and dominant ways of thinking. And there's so many ways of doing that. But solidarity is the key way of doing that. And that's what you've done. Not just with healthcare workers. But, standing here, probably as the only Jewish person in the room, as usual, recognizing that there's humanity in everybody. And we have to find it. It's not always easy, right? But when you dig down and you start asking people about their values, that's when things start to shift and when people begin to think, right? So we know, Imtiaz, that you use your values in action, and we appreciate that you've spoken not about your actions so much, but about the values that allow you to act. And that is the same of the people who are your co-workers in other parts of the world. So thank you very much, Imtiaz. Salim, I'm calling you on now. Thanks so much.
Thank you very much, Monique. It's a humbling experience to be here with you all this afternoon. I'd like to take this opportunity to thank the makers of this movie and the risks that they went through in order to do so, and to thank each of you for sharing this experience today. As I watched it at the beginning, my mind was moved by an occasion about 40 years ago, in the mid-1980s, when I was a young doctor working at King Edward Hospital and being in the casualty department, in the emergency room, in the midst of a war in KwaZulu-Natal. And that war raged on as the Inkatha was annihilating the ANC activists in the communities, and what we were seeing was the security forces moving into the townships. And sitting in the casualty department and watching them come in, it all flooded back of what we were dealing with here under apartheid. Now, what we watched here was, 1,000 times worse, 1,000,000 times worse. But it spoke to the way in which the oppressor works. That the oppressor dehumanizes the enemy, who they see as the enemy. And in dehumanizing them, what we were seeing was the way in which the apartheid security forces, the security branch, the military, the way they were dealing with the situation was in an uncaring and cruel manner. And what we watched here today was just beyond cruel. It was in a way that you would never treat another human being. And so that force that moved me some 40 years ago was very much rekindled many-fold in watching this movie today. But I want to make just 3 points in the time I have. The first is that what we are seeing, and this was pointed out really well when South Africa presented its case at the ICJ, that the goal here is to annihilate the people of Palestine and to make Palestine the next province or section of Israel. And that this would not be feasible, would not even be possible were it not for the US. The US bears the brunt of the responsibility. When you watch those plumes of mushroom smoke rise up, those are 2,000-pound bombs that are falling, and they have on them "Made in the USA." Those are armaments provided by the US government. And in dealing with this, having just spent several weeks in the US at my own university there, Columbia University, and seeing what is going on there, I can tell you that the US is tearing itself apart in dealing with this problem. That the US itself is now sacrificing its own constitution, it's sacrificing the rule of law, and it has created in the US an untenable situation where the US government is now acting against its own citizens now. As much as they will focus on Khalil Mahmoud and many of the foreign students who are studying at Columbia University, the reality is that the vast majority of people are now not just foreigners, but people from the US. They are US citizens, and many of them Jewish. While we were there, a group of Jewish students handcuffed themselves and tied themselves with chains to the gates of the university because they want the university to let them know which board member of Columbia University reported Mahmoud Khalil to ICE. Because that's what was done. The university's own leadership is taking action against its own students. So we have in the US a nation that is at war with itself over the actions of Israel. And that is the nature of what we are seeing, that it's not just a war in Israel or in Palestine. It is now a war that has spilled over across the world. And the last point I want to make is that in addition to what we have seen, in the way in which the dehumanization has occurred, the way in which the US is culpable as well, what we are going to see, and Monique touched on this, is that this will have enormous repercussions for decades to come. The psyche of what people are witnessing, and this is not just what Palestinians are witnessing, but which Israeli Defense Force soldiers are witnessing, and the way in which their sniper units are killing innocent civilians. They are seeing children and mothers and elderly people dying as a result of their actions. Those are individuals who are being dehumanized in themselves and will carry those scars. And when they go back to Israel, God forbid the word peacetime, what I'm using, but you understand what I mean, they will carry those scars. Just as much as the people of Gaza will carry those scars, the members of the Israeli Defense Force and all of those individuals will carry those scars. It is going to have these long-term repercussions. I'd like to just end on the note that people have often asked me, what's the point if you protest, or if you do this, or if you do that? I'll leave you with an important message, because that message came to me very strongly in this movie. This documentary, although entitled Under the Rubble, to me was very much about how healthcare workers are actually rising out of that rubble to stand firm. And it actually was, for me, a story of resilience and ability to deal with adversity and still rise and come back and come back. The message I send to people when they ask me, what's the point? You're not going to be able to change anything. And I say to them that, as an anti-apartheid activist over many years in South Africa, I never, ever imagined that I would see the end of apartheid and the dawn of democracy while I was still alive. I never imagined that, because at the time that we were fighting the apartheid government, it seemed immovable. It seemed to be all powerful. They seemed to control everything about us. They had us under their thumb. And yet we fought. And yet we did everything in our power. We made life difficult. We made this country difficult to govern. I remember those 4 o'clock morning, waking up and going with my spray can with our colleagues to the bridges and spraying release Mandela and all of the things that we were taking on at that time. They were small things, each by themselves insignificant. But when you fight a wall that looks strong, every little dent you make counts. No matter how small that dent, together all of those little challenges, they all matter. So no matter what you do, no matter how big, how small, it all counts. And I just want to say that that message of resilience that came through today just tells us how important it is that we all count in this equation. Thank you.
Okay, thank you so much. Salim, I'm going to just, your words remind me very much of the words of Gabor Mate, where he talks about how we cannot not be confronted by what we are seeing in Palestine. And if we are not confronted by it, then we ourselves are not human. And I think that what you are saying correlates directly with him. But there's another thing that you're speaking to, and it's the idea of the massive small. That small acts add up and they become massive. You know, you spoke about in relation to the anti-apartheid movement, but it works in every possible way, right? So the massive small is something that we do need to think about, because that's what gives us hope, right? That the small acts do add up and that we rise above and we use the imaginary lens to be able to find something different going forward. I had the same thinking as you, Salim, when I watched this, and the thing that came to mind was an emergency medicine scene. You know, it did feel like that, right? Constantly. But being in emergency medicine all the time is so erosive to your humanity and so erosive to your cognitive, even to your cognition, right? That we have to recognize that while the doctors and the healthcare workers in Gaza and in other parts of the territory are resilient, they are also in need of care. And I think down the line, we do need to take that very seriously. What Palestine has done, to use your words slightly differently, is it has created a world divided. And everybody, and I mean everybody in their individual capacity and their collective capacity, has to decide where they sit on this divided world. And what we do know is that it is moving very, very quickly where we never thought it would be before, and that is to recognize the rights and the humanity and the dignity of the people of Palestine. If you're on the wrong side of history, you will know this going forward. And I like what you're saying, Salim. I think it's very important that you recognize the humanity not only of those who are suffering at the hands of the State of Israel, but also the young soldiers who are forced into combat, and now more so because 10,000 reservists are now being called up. There will be people who are ordinary people suddenly put on the front line of a terrible war. You know, recently, Salim, I was called into a situation at Capital Hospital where a man in his 60s had been put into an MRI, somebody who had been part of the SANDF, and suddenly been in that very confined space, went into combat mode. He started acting as if he had a rifle in his hand, and he started using very racial slurs, and I got hold, and people were, you need to come here, you need to help us with the situation, right, with this guy. And they were, of course, very confronted, and I said, recognize that his psyche, his ability to hold himself together has also been shattered. Apartheid affected everybody. It ruined the human psyche. And it is the same for the situation in whatever we may call it, Palestine, Israel, whatever it is, whether it stays like that or it doesn't stay like that, it is something that we need to confront. Lastly, I think the point that you make that is really, really important is that what is emerging in places of power are cracks and contradictions. And it is in that space of contradiction that new movements begin to take place. That alliances begin to change. And I think it is a time of mobilization of the psyche, of ideology, and of practice. And healthcare workers have a role there. Thanks very much. Okay, I'm going to open up. We are sitting now at 3:20. I'm going to let this roll out for as long as people can stay, not beyond 4, definitely not. But if people need to go, please just feel free to go, because we want to thank you for being here for the main part. We have had a couple of questions that have come online. I just wanted to raise a few of those, just maybe 3, get responses, and then open up, if that's okay. I'm just speaking to the organizers. Okay, so just 3 that have come up. The one is, what meaningful steps can academia play in this context and in others like this? I'm not sure who wants to answer that, but it can come from the floor as well. The other one is, what contribution can local healthcare workers, in other words, South African healthcare workers, make in relation to the current situation in Palestine? And the third one, which I think Hanan to some degree already answered, is how should the health sciences be educating students to ensure that they become professionals who are concerned with social justice? Those are 3 questions. I'm going to allow either of you to respond, but anyone from the floor who wants to respond is welcome to, and then I'll move on to questions and comments.
Thanks, Monique. I'll address the first question relating to, how could academics make a contribution? I would argue that there are around 3 key elements that academics could be contributing. At one level, if you look at the most useful and precise estimates of the death toll in Gaza, it is from an article published in The Lancet. And that article used a very rigorous method called capture-recapture. And they used a range of different sources, and they were able to generate much more reliable estimates of the deaths in Gaza over that period that they studied. And essentially they showed that the Palestinian Authority was under-reporting deaths by 41%. So they were giving us some idea that when you hear that there are 52,000 deaths, then you got to add another 40% to that. And that they make very clear is only the direct deaths due to injury. It excludes people who are dying because they don't have access to health care, or they don't have a range of other services like getting their routine hypertension medications and so on. The second point they make in that article in The Lancet, which I found was quite striking, in their analysis, which is quite detailed, they show that 59.1%, so it's almost 60%, of the deaths that they were able to study, include in their study, were in children, in women, and in the elderly over the age of 65. So what they were showing is that those were clearly people who pose no threat. So the first is we can do research like that as academics, because our role is, the second point I want to make, our role is to be truth sayers. Our role is to challenge the thin veneer of the excuses that you see coming out of Israel. And that thin veneer of excuses, it needs the truth to challenge them. And they might be impervious to the truth, but not everyone is impervious to the truth. The truth will remain the truth, even if it's for historical purposes. And so that's our role as academics. And the third, role I think we could be playing as academics is that we need to be looking at how we can support the people of Palestine in whatever shape or form, whether it's through solidarity activities, whether it's to contribute financial resources, or whether it's to do one of the things my center has done is we've created 4 fellowships for pre-docs and postdocs who are now unable to continue their studies to come to South Africa to finish their studies, ready to go back to rebuild a future Palestine.
Thank you, Salim. I'm going to go down the rows. Imtiaz.
Still working. Okay. I want to add to what Salim has said. In terms of the academics, the universities have been, somebody raised the issue about, ladies here who spoke about, challenging and, Professor Jairam mentioned it, that universities haven't raised the issue. What I found is working over the last 19 months is slowly 1 or 2 lecturers come, they engage another group, and the bigger group engages a bigger group. It's about mindset change, because people have been so indoctrinated for the last 76 years, they actually believe what is being said is true. And suddenly you're hearing people, look, I'm in the field all the time. I do a lot of lectures, I go to a lot of places. And a lot of white people, you suddenly see that I was 100% pro-Israel, I'm now 100% pro-Palestine. And I asked them a simple question, what made you change your mind? I finally found the truth. And it's about that, about taking the truth and doing it in universities and going to change the thinking in the Senate decisions to say, sorry, we're cutting all relationships with Israel and on this basis. And it's been led by a lot of people in the different universities. On the same thing what Salim is saying is, academics have now come forward. Can we teach them on the other side? Can we rebuild their systems, whether it's health, education, engineering, mechanics, mechatronics, or whatever it may be? Can we train? Can we bring them here and we open spaces for them to study? Can we help? The lecturers are saying the same thing. The students in the different student bodies are saying the same thing. For example, let's take a practical example, and let's finish it over here. When it came to bringing the Gaza students, we brought them to South Africa. 27 at UCT, 22 at WITS, and 10 to UP. It was a challenge because they had lots of pressure that if you come, we're going to withdraw the funding, and funding was withdrawn from the universities. But they took a decision, they're going to do it either way. It was a phenomenal inter-university cooperation between WITS, UCT, and UP, Islamic University of Gaza, and Aqsa Al-Azhar University, to see how we're going to modify the syllabus. Because they're now in the final year, we teach something differently. They don't see half the conditions that we see this side. And how do you balance the stuff? And how do you fit them into our block when we already got shortage of manpower, we got shortage of resources, we don't have enough doctors? How do you train them? The language between, yes, lucky they all speak English, but then we're coming to the black languages. What happens in those patients' cases? The cultural issues, the food, the logistics. It was easier to deal with disaster, to be honest with you, than to deal with this. Because and at the same time, their minds are here, but their families in Gaza. How do they deal with that? How do they cope with that? And suddenly, we come to South Africa, the first thing we tell them, it's a very dangerous country. Be careful, hold your hands, make sure you know. They're already traumatized, and then something happens outside, and these guys are terrified to come out of the house. Yeah? So and we have to tell them, no, we have to hold their hand. Fortunately, the public, the lecturers, everybody modified, went out of the way to teach them, to assist them. And we can do a lot that way. From the South African point of view, you do psychology. We've got different groups where we look at different methods, where it's in a state of permanent PTSD, it's not post-traumatic, it's permanent trauma. And working with people in Gaza and in West Bank, and with psychologists in the country and outside. We've got groups set up. My wife runs it, she's head of my counseling services, where they look at different modalities and different psychologists, how to build resilience, how to go across with teams. So we've got an entire psychology team, we've got an entire speech therapy team. These kids can't speak anymore. The trauma has taken their speech away. They've lost the words how to talk. We've got speech, and we've got 200 highly qualified healthcare professionals on standby to walk in the moment it happens, besides everything else that we've got to do. So that's the contribution of South Africa. Academically, solidarity, standing together, doing things together. And even in universities, things are changing. Before it used to be 104 and 20 against, now it's 60, 50. It's well, work out the figures, it's working out. It's more and more, it's turning around. That comes from consistent solidarity, consistent education, and of course, nobody wants to go on the wrong side of history.
Thank you so much. Hanan.
can start. In every event, I just want to amplify the importance of psychological rehabilitation. And as we all know, especially with anyone with a healthcare background, this will extend for generations. And I'm telling you, this will extend from myself to my kids, and from my kids to their kids, and that's on. And I think you as South African know exactly the impact of apartheid on the psychology. So I'm in a total agreement with Mr. Sulaiman when he said never underestimate the small acts. So to be honest with you, even especially with psychological sessions, even if it is like a group or individual, I know that there is like difficulties in internet connectivity and in connecting people from inside Gaza to people from outside Gaza. But if there is like any opportunity for the international organizations, especially when it comes, for example, to the Gift of the Givers, who has their office there in Gaza, if they can arrange for online rehabilitation sessions, online psychological rehabilitation sessions, and I was asked all the time, I was asked, is there like benefits or impacts of this? And I can tell you, as a Palestinian people from the first place, yes, and it has like a great impact, a positive impact. I'm putting myself now in the shoes of the people inside Gaza and think with the same mentality of someone outside Gaza, like 10,000 kilometers away from Gaza, thinking about me and have this background of calming me down and rest assuring me. It will, I'm telling you, it will make a big difference. This is my contribution for the psychotherapy. Just like 2 points for the academia. Research is the library who will last forever for generations. So if there is like, I'm not sure, a guiding body or entity in the universities who work with the students in such a field, it will be like, inshallah, a great, and it has a great impact in the future.
Thank you so much, Hanan. I'm now going to open up to the rest of the people here. Please feel free to either ask a question, give an input about your response to either the discussion or the movie, or make a comment, please. Yeah.
Is this thing working?
Yeah.
To the psychological part.
Sorry, I can't see very well. So who's going to be? Okay. Sorry, there's a light shining in my face, so I can't actually see. Okay. All right. Yeah. Sorry. Carry on.
I just want to add something to that. We found something very strange for the students. When we told them, let's give you psychological support, they said, you're weak if you do that. You can't go for the support because their parents are suffering on the other side. They refuse to take the support. We tried to partner psychologists inside Gaza. Only 1 or 2 of them took the assistance, but never really came to fruition. What we have done in the meantime is in Egypt, we're supporting 180 psychologists. We're part of the group that's funding them to look after civilians, parents and children inside Cairo, in Egypt, to get psychological support, which is a little easier, but it's not a war situation. But inside Gaza, it's very difficult for them to accept it, and the students here refuse to accept it. It's a sign of weakness because they have to make the sacrifice. Just a different dimension in psychology.
Yeah, no. We'll get. I mean, it's a really important point. I'm going to come back to you, Hanan, but let me just take the questions as they emerge. There was one at the back. Yeah.
Me?
Yeah.
Okay. Assalamu alaikum, Hanan. How are you? I have a question for you and a question for Dr. Suleiman. They're both short questions, though.
Yeah.
I want to know, Hanan, as a Palestinian woman, how do you feel when you hear that IDF soldiers may be affected by this as well? Because sometimes when you look at Instagram posts, you see that they're actually quite narcissistic about what they're doing as well. I don't think that every one of them is unwilling in that particular position. So how do you feel about that? Do you think there's an element of truth to that this would affect them from a trauma point of view and a psychological point of view? And then my question for Dr. Suleiman, I read that some of the students, there was a farewell dinner for them recently, and they're going back to Palestine. I just wanted to know what happens with them next. Do they go back into the system regarding which we watched the documentary now? Or what happens with them, and how are they feeling about that prospect? Thank you very much.
Thank you. And then I'm going to take two at a time, unless there's anyone. Sorry, where? Yeah. Go ahead.
I just wanted to know from one of the doctors, the people are now inhaling all this effects of the bombing, etc., and obviously even their skins maybe are being affected. And I just wanted to know what sort of comment do you want to make about that?
Okay, can we get one more question? Is there one more? Oh, Lubna? Over there.
Very much to the panelists. I agree with everything that you've said. I just want to reiterate something I mentioned at the beginning when I made a few comments. At the university, we have organized ourselves as academics and students into a group called UKZN Scholars for Palestine. And I would urge all of us who are based at the university to join and to mobilize and take that project further. I want to, though, suggest something very sort of substantial and say that those of us who are Senate representatives on our UKZN Senate to actually table this issue on our UKZN Senate to say we will actually stop supporting, or we will boycott any Zionist entities, any Zionist universities in Israel, and we will take a formal position. One of the challenges I've realized is to try and get our university management to take an official position. But as academics, we actually have a space where we can raise that voice. So I want to propose that we actually, those of us who are academics, please ask your Senate representatives to formally at the next Senate meeting table this issue. We have been trying to do it through the College of Humanities, but there may be other colleagues here. And once that gets done and a Senate resolution is passed, then as a university we can take a formal position, and that is something we need to do. The other thing is, one of the things that are important for us as activists is never stop speaking about Palestine. And there are always activities that are happening in the community. I think our MC Anissa will announce some of those. So I urge us to please continue to join those activities and to always speak about Palestine. Thank you.
Thank you, Lubna. Okay, I'm going to go back. I'm going to start with Hanan this time and go this way, just in terms of responding. The question specifically to you about the IDF. So the question was, how do you feel about statements that people who are in the IDF are also traumatized, like as a Palestinian person? You can use that.
Yeah. Aisha now is laughing. So I don't think that I'm the right person to answer this question, to be honest with you. I don't think that I'm the right person as a Palestinian who was affected like for many years from the Israeli soldiers, just to wallahi think about their psychology. I don't care about their psychology, to be honest with you. This is my, yeah. So from a humanitarian aspect, I'm in a total agreement with the scientific framing of anyone who is engaging in wars. And we watched like many of the movies, especially with the US Army, for example, in Afghanistan, in Iraq, in everywhere. The soldiers themselves will definitely be affected by all the injured and the deaths and the casualties and the immense situation they cause. The only quote I can say here, okay, for the small soldiers, for the young soldiers who found themselves just forced to be like with the IDF, I'm not sure about their circumstances because from what we believe, at least as Palestinians, no one are forced to serve in another armies other than his or her country. So I will let this to the politicians. I'm not in a position to differentiate people. But yes, they will definitely be affected. The only quote I can say is that, yeah, we will hold this trauma for generation, but at least, and I'm here, when I'm speaking about my trauma, I'm speaking about my trauma with pride, but the other party, I'm not sure they will speak about their trauma in a humiliating situation.
Thank you so much. Imtiaz, do you want to maybe comment on?
Also,
Yeah.
there's two aspects. The one is professors inside Israel from the early stages of the war started doing research and studies. And they said the words they use, there's an epidemic of mental illness inside Israel, number one. Number two, as in everything, you have the good, the bad, and the ugly. There are certain soldiers who are not keen to take part in this, they're forced to take part. They pay with a conscience and they turn away and they move away because they're not happy with what they've seen. It has affected them and they come out and they speak out. Like everybody else, they are persecuted, they are ostracized before speaking out the truth. So there will be a small portion of those that don't agree with what's going on, but they were forced to do that. We're not justifying that, but that's the reality. After the Vietnam War, more American soldiers killed themselves than actually died in the war, because it had a massive impact on their psyche, which means internally that consciousness is there that what we did was terribly wrong. And we're probably going to see the same thing happening in Israel. In your question to ask me, yes, they got nowhere to go. That's the bottom line. They're going to Egypt. In Egypt, you don't get paid for being an intern, you pay to be an intern. You pay $3,000 to enter the program, you're not paid monthly, you serve for no money. But so quite a few of them will go there. Some will go to the other countries where their families are. There's a few who got nowhere to go. Their parents are inside Gaza, they got no home. We are now working out whether to keep them in South Africa and train them with just supernumeraries, kind of just provide some kind of service, or put them in Egypt and fund them in Egypt, but will they want to be living without their families in Egypt? That's the question. We're working with this in the last 2 days. That's what we're busy with right now. Because some of them have left yesterday, some are leaving today, some are leaving by the weekend. That's the Cape Town lot, not the other ones. So we may move the Cape Town lot, the 4 that can't have no homes to go to, we may move them to stay with the Joburg lot. But we look at how to sort their problem out, whether they want to stay or move across or work somewhere else. We haven't sorted that problem out. But you can't go into Gaza. For the last week, we are stuck completely inside. We can't deliver food, we can't deliver medicine, we don't have anything, our warehouses are dry. We've done 0 delivery in the last 1 week.
Thank you, Imtiaz. And then, Salim, do you maybe want to answer the question around, you know, what are the long-term health effects of the devastation in terms of, I think what you're asking about is the sort of chemicals in the air, the pollutants, all of that are going to stay on way beyond the conflict.
Yeah, I think you asked a question for which we actually don't have an answer, because we haven't seen the effects of this kind of warfare occurring in the population over a long term. So I think that's the research that's going to have to be done to answer your question about what the respiratory effects will be, what's the effects on the skin. All those will be questions that will be answered over time as data becomes available. I think one of the central issues that we've all highlighted here is that we are all one humanity. We are all bound by each other by our humanity, and that our solidarity with our fellow sufferers who are going through this, that we in this country know better than most. We lived under apartheid. We lived under oppression. We know when we see apartheid. And when we look at what's going on in Israel and in Palestine, we can see that apartheid. It's not foreign to us. We can see it, we can feel it. So for us, it has a very immediate effect. And that effect and that immediacy that we can identify with is one that is an important rallying point for us. And that for us, it speaks to the way in which we've responded to our own oppression and the opportunity we have, each of us, whether it's through what was being said about Senate and institutions of our society, but making that little difference, each of us, is going to be important. I want to end by just saying, unfortunately, I have to leave because we have the College of Medicine graduation this evening.
Yeah.
And we've got to graduate the next set of specialists, and so I'm going to have to leave in the next few minutes.
That's
Thank you.
fine. Salim, thank you so much for being with us. We'll let you go. I've got 2 questions. Then we've got the students, health science students are going to do a poem, and then we're going to close by 4. So I saw Roseanne, and I think, okay, one hand over there. Alsha, you also or not? No. Okay, so 2 last ones, and then, am I right? Okay. Oh, is there 3? Who's the third one? Oh, okay. Roseanne?
Thank you very much. I just wanted to take this moment just to draw our attention back to the actual movie that we watched and to the healthcare workers. And speaking as a healthcare worker myself, I'm also in emergency medicine and also work in mental health. And I found this movie extremely emotional, and I was sort of sobbing at the back. And I just want to draw attention to the actual doctors and nurses and healthcare workers. And yes, they're resilient, not because they are born any different in terms of their genetics, but they have been forced to be like that over these past 100 years, and all the intifadas and the wars that have been, particularly in Gaza, but also in the West Bank. And you know, something that Monique said at the beginning is that when we go into healthcare, we go because we want to alleviate suffering and prevent death at all times. That's usually something that is a driving force. And so when they are so overwhelmed, you can't even call what they are seeing there as triage. It takes triage. Triage is not that. It's not walking through corridors and rooms where there are just bodies lying, and you don't have, not only is there extreme damage, you don't have enough healthcare workers nor enough medicines, painkillers. I mean, the damage it does for us. I had a patient recently an elderly lady who fractured her arm but is allergic to every single painkiller. And all of us were shaking and almost in tears watching her trying to position her arm for the x-ray because she was allergic to every painkiller. She was vomiting from the pain. This is all day, every day in Gaza with children. This woman could at least understand she's allergic, so she knows her situation. The moral injury it is doing to the healthcare workers cannot be overemphasized. We have to bear that in mind.
Thank you so much, Roseanne. We've got one comment, and then Hanan also has a meeting at 4, so I'm going to try and keep it as tight as possible. So last comment, hopefully comment or a question, then I'm going to hand over. Okay, Anita. Yeah.
Assalamu alaikum everyone, and hello. I'm Zakia Salad, a postdoc at Caprisa, so Prof. Salim's company. So I'm just thinking that, so I think everyone is saying that the help has to be multifaceted. So I think that we should create like a single central platform that shows like what support is needed and what help is available, so that anybody at anywhere can contribute in any way that they can, and it will be easily. So it's something to look forward to, like an action forward beyond this event.
Thank you so much. We've got 2 calls for action. Thank you very much. I'm going to hand back, and just thank you again to our panelists for their contribution, and to you for coming.
Thank you, Monique, for doing an incredible job. Thank you to the audience for your interest, curiosity, and your dedication by being here. We want to close this panel discussion by one of our OT4 students reciting a Mahmoud Darwish poem entitled "Think of Others." And can I call Ketukule Mtembu up to the mic? So he's going to recite the poem to close the panel's discussion. I'm going to, before he takes the mic, to say thank you to College of Health Sciences for hosting this timely and crucial discussion. Thank you to our partners, Healthcare Workers for Palestine and Gift of the Givers, our panelists, and obviously you for your interest and curiosity and engagement. After the poem, we'll do a short thank you and handover of some gifts, and then you must please join us for some refreshments in the foyer before you leave.
Think of others. As you prepare your breakfast, think of others. Do not forget the pigeon's food. As you conduct your wars, think of others. Do not forget those who seek peace. As you pay your water bill, think of others. Do not those who are nursed by clouds. As you return home to your home, think of others. Do not forget the people of the camps. As you sleep and count the stars, think of others, those who have nowhere to sleep. As you liberate yourself in metaphor, think of others, those who have lost the right to speak. As you think of others far away, think of yourself and say, if only I were a candle in the dark. Thank you.